Good afternoon again, well, I'm calling it afternoon because we're getting around 12 o'clock. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and again, a pleasant good morning to each and every one of you out there, and a good evening if you, listen to us this evening between 6 and 8. And I have the honor to have a fantastic businessman, and as I have always said, his reputation precedes him. His theories, again, are deep-seated and based on experience that he has, and at this time in our history, we better all wake up and smell the coffee. You were elaborating, Warren, particularly how we're going to dig our way out of this.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to message me on Facebook,
okay,
please do. I've got it right here. It's just Warren Mosler is my Facebook page. Okay, so what I see happening is, I was at the hospital the other night for the debate, Schneider Hospital.
Right, okay.
And I explained that if the hospital pays $20 million in payroll, and the hospital's owned by the government, that we might get $5 million of that back, maybe $6 million in income taxes.
Correct.
So the real cost of the hospital is only $14 million,
right,
instead of 20. And then we should use those net figures when figuring out whether the hospital's profitable or not. So right now we charge the hospital $20 million, and there's no money for WAPA bills or Band-Aids or anything else. But that's because the government has taken $5 or $6 million off the top. So afterwards, Dr. Wheatley came up, introduced himself. He's running the hospital.
Sure.
And very well-spoken person, gentleman. And he said, the hospital had grossed $180 million last year, and we had a loss of $7 million, and they've cut off our allotment. So let me give you the first part first.
Sure.
So I said, well, what was your payroll? He said, $40 million. I said, well, you probably sent $10 million to the general fund. He said, yeah, I know, after listening to your presentation.
Right.
So they actually had a profit of $3 million, but they reported a loss of $7 million, right?
Sure.
So for the government as a whole, and so that $7 million would have paid their WAPA bills and everything else, okay? And it would have been the $7 million, $10 million less for the general fund.
Sure.
Except if they had a $3 million profit, then that would go to the general fund, which is okay if they want to do that. And so what we have is a general fund problem and not a hospital problem.
Sure.
So the hospital financiers are actually profitable, but they show a loss because the general fund takes $10 million off the top.
Well, it uses it whatever way they want to use it.
Right. So he said, I said at the next meeting, we're gonna talk about this.
Good point.
Okay, so there's progress there, which is good. But then we start talking about this allotment. So they take in $180 million a year in revenues from insurance companies and billing and whatnot. And then the government gives them money to pay their expenses. Presumably the $180 million gets used for expenses. So let's say $15 million a month or something. And for the last 2 months, they haven't been getting that. So I said, well, your payables, you're just not paying your bills. He says, yeah, our payables are up to $30 million. So now the hospital has gotten behind, the government has withheld $30 million of payment to the hospital.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, coincidentally, they announced $28 million of tax returns would be paid. Right? So they're taking the money hospitals are getting from insurance companies to pay their bills, causing them to be $30 million behind on their vendor bills and everything, so that they can use that money to pay income taxes, and they're still going to be $70 million behind on their taxes.
So, Warren, how do we change the mindset with what you're presenting? And obviously you tickled the mind again of the CEO of the hospital.
Yeah.
How do we finally get it out of the fat hands of, again, the chief executive? And I mean that we're talking about institutionally and apply this stuff.
There's some things we can trim down, quite a few, in terms of waste and fraud and, not waste, accounting issues and things like that.
Right.
And look, I've run companies with 20, 30, 40 billion of assets regulated by 5 different federal regulators. And I've never had a penny not accounted for and never had any infractions, for decades.
Yes.
So I know how to, I can do that. And it's important, and you have to do that, because if you don't, it gets worse and worse and worse. So you have to stop the bleeding there. But it's going to be $20 or $30 million a year, maybe, my estimates of what you say, which is fantastic, but we got a much bigger problem right now. Okay, the payables, I think, for the government as a whole are about $200 million behind that haven't been paid. Vendors that haven't been paid. Contractors that haven't been paid.
Right.
I was talking to one contractor. He pulls me over after the thing that he's owed $4.5 million. Hasn't got a got his money. He's already done the work. So, and then, so, and the legislature's appropriated $200 million more than they're going to take in for taxes. And the governor talks about $161 million of new revenues for next year. But that assumes these large increases in revenues because of all the new activity that's going on from all right, so that means but for the revenue to be higher next year than it was this year, Lime Tree has to have that many more employees. So if they have 1,000 this year and they still have 1,000 next year, the revenues don't increase, they're the same.
Well, not only that, they don't factor in this issue again, the FY 2018 budget based on folks that are going to be paying income tax. We're talking about folks here, and I did discuss it with the IRB, and we're talking about a situation where people are going to be having a tremendous amount of write-offs. We're talking about folks that were underinsured. We're going to get nowhere near than they expect.
And those write-offs are larger than 1 year, so they get carried forward.
Absolutely, 2017 and 18.
Yeah, but they'll get carried forward to 19 and 20.
Well, I know what you're saying. They'll carry forward.
So, in other words, to get new revenues, you've got to do better than you did this year.
Right.
And so, if we have so many FEMA and so many contractors working here that are outside of Lime Tree, maybe there's 2,000 of them.
Yeah.
Then, if we still have 2,000 next year, there's no increase in revenues.
Of course
we'd have to get 3,000 or 4,000. Well, that's not going to happen.
Well, that has not been factored in.
No, and actually they're going down. They're not going up.
So I'm agreeing with you.
So the 161 million is, let's say it's suspect.
Right.
Okay, but there's still a large structural deficit even with the 161. It's going to be a lot worse.
Right.
Okay, if this 70 million from Lime Tree doesn't come in, what did they say about that? There's going to be a press news conference, did they say? Or what did he say in the last hour about that?
There's going to be a press conference. There's going to be an announcement of a partner taking it.
Oh, okay. This is coming soon?
It's going to, yes.
I hope so, because even though, we're stuck with the lower tax rate, we're stuck with the interest and everything else, so hopefully we get the money before we start bouncing checks.
Well, and I'm sure that and generally these kind of things, Warren, whether you know it or not, are generally planned as far as politically are concerned.
Yeah.
Right. Closer to election.
Yeah. Okay. So
the rabbit's pulled out of the hat.
Okay. So if that doesn't come in, the government is not going to be meeting payroll, by January.
That you and I will agree on, with 1 or 2 days of cash on hand. They're banking on everything, and as you have so astutely recognized, they're not paying any of the vendors. So it's a fault. It's ridiculous.
All right. So what do you do coming into that situation? So we're in you got to have not only a plan A and a plan B, you need a plan C. And so let me just talk about plan A.
Sure. For
financing, and I can talk about potholes. I can talk about first graders reading these things. You can understand this stuff now gets a little bit technical, but just so you know, there's like a whole range of things going on here. We've got to meet with the appropriate people in Washington about having them take over all our rum bonds, okay, and refinancing those with Washington, not with anybody, not with the bond markets, because two things: they cause the problem with their community disaster loans being senior, and because they inherently have no risk if they do it, while any other bondholder has risk. Right. And the reason is because the money to pay the bonds comes from federal rum money. So the bondholders, in theory, have no risk because the federal money goes into an account and they get paid. Right. But when you get community disaster loans getting in the way, when you have situations in Puerto Rico saying you could have federal changes to your whole structure getting in the way, so suddenly that money goes somewhere else, there's an enormous risk in being a bondholder. But if the federal government takes over the bonds, then the federal money's coming in to pay the federal government. They don't have any risk of not paying themselves. They know they're going to get paid because it's their own money. All right, so that eliminates the risk for us. There is no risk for them. And it's a way for them to help us to sort of help make things right here without spending a penny, without risking anybody's taxpayer money. Right? And they have there's another set of things they can do to lower our interest rate even more. So what they do is they can we can, once the federal government has taken over, we can then sell the new federally guaranteed bonds in the marketplace as tax-free bonds. And the way the federal government does that is they issue something they call slugs, S-L-U-G-S, I believe is the acronym. And these are special treasury securities issued to municipalities for the purpose of collateralizing municipal debt. They're not issued to the public for the government to borrow money or anything like that. And they put these into a trust, into a structure that guarantees the municipal bonds. And then you go and sell, you get bondholders, you get investors who take these are the very highest quality, they're full faith and credit of the U.S. government, and right now these municipal bonds would sell at about 2.25%. They would invest at 2.25% to get tax-free with government, full faith and credit of the government. Right, so that would lower our interest payments every year by, depending on how we retired the bonds, $30, $40, $50 million. So it's an immediate annual savings, and over 10 years, it has a present value of over $300 million for us, and it costs the government nothing. But it does one other important thing. When we borrowed all that rum money, it got $1.2 billion. We actually borrowed more than that. We borrowed an extra $175 million. We were forced to do this, and we had to put it in a reserve fund that the bondholders demanded. In case we couldn't pay the bonds, they'd have that reserve fund to make the payments. Right? Once the federal government has become the bondholder, once we've issued these slugs, the investors don't require this anymore. So we can get that $175 million back, and we're going to need it as a bridge to get from here to there, because these other revenue sources aren't going to kick in right away.
Right.
$175 million will give us maybe a year and a half to get the others kicked in. The risk is if the federal government doesn't like your plan, if they don't think it's credible, they won't give you that money. Instead, they'll say, we're going to reduce the amount that you can borrow.
Wow.
So it's going to be critical to have a real plan in place that they sign off on that shows the fiscal responsibility to be able to get from here to there.
So you're going to be spending a lot of time on Wall Street and in Washington, aren't you? All right, let's take another break. We're going to be back in a minute. We're going to continue this track along out there. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but however, we certainly took many years to get in this. And again, Mosler has got a plan to get us out. And why there's a lot of validity to this is that the folks that are running against him are recognizing it themselves and saying, well, why didn't I think of that? Well, you either got to have that background to be thinking this way. And again, I think in our timing and our history, you're a perfect fit. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5. All right, and we're back again, and we're having a little fun off the air. And again, I always tell you I should have an entire 2 hours of off-air discussions that I have with some of these candidates, because they're frank, and again, you don't worry about what somebody's going to say about you and blah, blah, blah. However, I was chatting with Mr. Mosler about him watching all this negative stuff going on around him, and I did point out to him I watch these debates and see you in the middle while a mud is flying, or I'm being polite saying it's mud. Talk to me a little bit about, because you clearly outline your plans, and they really make sense because they're all recognizing it. But where do you place yourself in the psychology of getting elected with all of this going on around you?
Well, Ruben just took a survey for me.
Yes.
And he just surveyed at random 100 people out at the local grocery stores and people like that. And he's disappointed because only 40 said they were voting for me. I think that's pretty good out of 100.
You gotta be kidding.
Yeah, so, which was right where to me, it's not totally unexpected.
Right.
And particularly now in the last couple of weeks where you've got the governor running ads explaining why we should not vote for Albert Bryant. We got Albert Bryant. And I think he's right. We have Albert Bryant running ads on why you should vote for the governor. And I think he's right, too. Yeah. And if they were the only two in the race, of course, that would drive votes back and forth to each other. But they're not. So I think they both let us know in no certain terms that we shouldn't be voting for either one of them. And
well,
so
why do you think they marginalized you? Because or the other candidates?
Yeah. So, and the voters are listening to them, and they are kind of agreeing with them. Okay, we agree with you. We shouldn't vote for either one of you, and so they're voting for somebody else.
Yes.
And so it's not surprising that they've accentuated or accelerated this process.
Yes.
Or that's going on right now.
Right.
Saying, we don't want the same thing to happen. We know what happens. We hear, you can say anything you want a week, 2 weeks before the election.
Sure.
And you will say anything you want to get elected. It's like somebody on drugs. They'll tell you anything.
Right.
Okay, to get that next $5 or $10 that they need. And then afterwards, we're back to where we were.
Sure.
And it's not so much that they're voting for me. I mean, they are. But they want a change. They're voting against what's been going on. And they're sending a message to these other people that we're not going to fall for this time. You don't fool me once, shame on me.
Sure.
Fool me twice, shame on you. And it's not just twice; it's been the last 3 times.
Right.
And things have gotten bad enough where they're willing to do that. It doesn't happen in a good economy. It doesn't.
Well, excluding any preconceived.
If the last economy was so good, how did Bernie Sanders get any votes?
Well, how did Trump get elected?
Right. So things weren't good.
Right.
And the numbers were good, and the Federal Reserve numbers were good.
Sure.
And then, if they actually were good, how did these people get votes? It's because there are a lot of dissatisfied people, and so and as they say, a blind man can see that this place is a disaster, the physical structure. And I think the last straw was I was in St. Thomas, and the sewage starts bubbling up in the streets of Charlotte, Amalia, and that was it. And you go from department to department to department, and everything is falling apart. Now, what I want to say right this moment, because I want to keep myself from doing this. We know this. We got to look ahead and figure out what we're going to do next. As we used to say in the investment business, you're only as good as your next trade.
Boy, isn't that the truth? What did you do for me today?
No, what's going to do tomorrow?
Right, correct.
What you did today or yesterday doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So I'm not asking for a reward for past performance. It's all about what we can do next. And that's why I've been so careful to not go off message. Sometimes you have to a little bit talk about the past,
right? Because
sometimes it has meaning for the future, but you've got to just keep looking forward on what we're going to do next. Right. What are we going to do this week in our first grade reading classes?
Yes.
And we can, and that concerns me no end.
Right.
I feel like the seriousness of what we're walking into, maybe more than anybody else.
Well, I think that you're interpreting it, and I like the way he prefixed his question. We're talking about Reuben. If I'm correct, it was basically, who do you think is best qualified? And when you posed it that way, bam, he's off the chart. But then,
that was more than 40, right?
Yeah, and then we'll step up to the microphone. Go over the question, and then it's an interesting observation.
It was closer to everybody thought I'm best qualified, and Reuben was disappointed because only 40% of those would vote for me.
Yes, I understand.
That's nothing to be disappointed about.
No, I'm understanding. But what was the second question about? Well, who are you voting for? Are you voting for him?
Well, basically, 100 people, Plaza East, Golden Rock, and Plaza West.
Right.
Cross section of people.
Any particular complexion? Any all racial lines.
All racial line.
Yeah.
Out of all the candidates that are running, who is the most qualified to deal with a troubled company?
Right.
That's have potential, but needs to restructure.
Right.
And
a turnaround artist.
Yes.
Right.
And 100% of the people said Warren Muzzle is the most qualified, can turn it around.
Right.
Second question. Now, would you vote for him?
Right.
I was looking to get 51 individuals to say yes.
Yeah.
I got 40 people.
Yes.
And the one thing that the 60 people had against him, he's Caucasian.
Right. Well, you and I have been through that before.
Yes.
Okay, and again, and I'm going to speak to the listeners out there. They certainly, not one of them can claim that I did not do a good job when I was in there. And I am saying, for a community to unite, we got to take the best of the best. The best thing to do is get a pair of sunglasses that don't see color. And so many Caucasians, white continentals, have been tremendous in these legislatures and so on and so forth. So, if you feel that way, and of course I can't dictate to you, but suck it up, because really, if you look at this individual, the amount of contributions he's made personally to this community, and the fact that he's willing to step up to the plate is unbelievable. And I look at him, and I've worked for a couple of Continentals myself, way up on the league, saying, well, I would like to be in politics. Some of the worst problems that we have rating ourselves as a Caucasian are Caucasians rating us. Because in many cases they would say to me, why would you ever want to do that, blah, blah, blah. So some of my worst detractors were people that looked like me. And then you're in another position where those that look like you don't trust us because they're used to this pattern of thinking. And it's basically breaking out of that mold. So that should absolutely have nothing to do with the way you conduct yourself when you get in the poll. Nobody knows who the hell you're voting for anyway. Just do it.
One of the things,
and I don't have to advocate for him. You brought that subject up, and it is sensitive to me.
And one of the things I ask some of them, you're drowning. See the sharks.
Right.
And you see someone in front of you.
Right.
You see Donald Trump in front of you.
Right.
And he stick his hands out. What are you going to do?
Right.
No, I told him I just drowned.
Yeah. Well, you see, there's where Mosler and I are together on that one. But however, it's just like I have used the argument because they have locked out a lot of off-island doctors, and you are very sick, and we're talking about you out there. Do you think you care whether somebody is born here or not, that is a doctor that is maybe more qualified than a local doctor? I don't care who it is. I'm going to take that doctor. He is like a doctor of finances. And again, so whatever way we can pull out of here, and again, it sounds like I'm just strictly advocating, but you made a point where if they want to vote against him for some other reason, they don't like the way he looks.
I make a different point. Not that you're right or wrong, but just different.
I'm always right.
I run into people, last time I ran, said, you got my vote, wouldn't vote for a woman, never will. It's like, I look at it, I'm like, it's not why I want you to vote or anything. This is strange. And then I run into people saying, well, I'm voting for one of the other candidates because we need a woman to be governor.
Yeah.
Or we need a man to be governor. And, I don't believe that. And so you have a cross-section of population. That's us. This is our family, okay? And you go through your family, you've got all types.
Right.
All parties and everything else. And these are the cards we're dealt. This is what life has given us. It's always been this way. You go in the Bible, different people from different tribes are fighting each other and killing each other.
Yes.
You go to Europe, the horrible wars, they're all the same. They're all killing each other because fighting each other. And, I kind of respect that. It's the human condition. It's what we are as a people. And so I recognize it. Personally, when I meet people, I don't see what they I realize other people do. And
I understand that. I'm not naive, both of us. But then how do you overcome that?
Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't.
Okay.
It's not
all right, I'm just asking you. What strategy do you have to overcome that?
I don't have any strategy.
Okay.
If that's what it is, that's
what it is.
Yeah, I don't try and overcome it or not overcome it. It's not a thing to overcome or not overcome.
Right.
Look,
you want to get elected.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay, good.
This is not my dream job. Right?
Okay, well, I understand that.
I put my proposals out on what we can do.
Sure.
People read them, see them, hear them, evaluate them, and I am what I am, and then if they want those proposals enacted, they can vote for me. And if they have more important reasons to them for voting, then I respect that, and they vote for somebody else. And then I go back to my normal life. It's not like my dream is going to be shattered or something.
No. But you're not going to stop contributing. But you're not going to stop contributing.
Well,
you have gotten the attention of those.
Okay, I've got that disease. I understand.
Okay. Well,
the disease
I
of
don't
public
think it's
service.
a disease.
But I'm just teasing. But again, I don't go out to try and overcome things like that. It's not how I think. I just say, here's how I can fix the GRS. If that's what you like, you vote for me and I'll get it done. And they'll say, well, would you be if Albert Bryant wins, because he's my neighbor, my best friend, and we went to school together, would you be head of the PFA? I go, yeah, if he asked me, but I know it's going to be Angel Dawson.
Yeah.
Because the Democrats are going to do that, and we're going to have the DeYoung type of thing going on again. But that's okay. I mean, maybe they won't. Maybe he will. I'm wide open, but
Yeah.
the only sure way you're going to have me do this is to elect me. But if you want to take a chance, again, I respect that. Okay, this job is probably going to kill me, right? Because I don't do
let's
things
put it
halfway.
this way.
I do things all out.
They say it ages you about 10 years in a one-term
But I
scenario. And
take
you only
things-
want one term anyway,
I
right?
take things to heart. I'm a worker bee. I've always worked
Yeah.
hard my whole life. I'm going to do what I think it takes to get it done, and it's going to be a massive pay cut, right? And it's going to be highly disruptive.
But you
to
do
my-
understand that is highly unusual because here everybody is sitting there counting numbers. We're not talking about how you get out of this. The normal logic here to the victors go the spoils. And then, again, for somebody to have that wholesome approach to this is very, very unusual because it just is unheard of here. You broke the mold and I believe what you're saying is
we also have a governor who looks to me is conducting a scorched earth policy.
Yes.
He's making sure every dime's already been borrowed, which the previous governor already did. That's why this governor didn't borrow more money, because there wasn't any way to borrow money left. He used it all up, got a little bit here and there, got a community disaster loan when he could get away with it, and that's it. And so now it's over.
Right.
And the payables are up as high as they can go. They haven't paid anybody. Nobody's ever done this.
Sure.
And you go into every area. The nurses are buying their own thermometers in the hospitals and things. And the school
Patients are buying
supplies.
their own toilet paper to go up there.
Yeah, and the children have to go home to go to the bathroom because there's nothing in school. This is like, there's not one single area that's sewage bubbling up into it. So whoever walks into this thing is, they say to get out of a hole you have to stop digging. They're still digging.
Yes.
Okay. Whoever walks into this has no idea, I don't think, what they're walking into. It's I'm going to be governor, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and we need this, and we need that, and we need more psychiatrists, and they need Warren Moser to bring in the money to pay for this. Is what they need.
You're walking into it, and
I know what I'm walking into.
If you get elected,
and it's frightening.
Yeah, it is frightening. But the other ones that are running, they don't see it as frightening because
care.
you know how serious it is.
They just want the job. They don't
I
care what they're
understand
walking
it.
into.
I clearly understand it.
It's no concern whatsoever.
I've lived and breathed this crap for years.
Yeah.
And
they just want to turn. It's my turn to drive the car. It's my turn to do this. It's my turn. Maybe I want to have a turn to do this.
Right.
It's like, I don't want to have a turn to do this. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah, but
I see a serious human disaster.
Watch this over a period of years.
You know what else troubles me a lot?
Talk to me.
I liked it living in this community, obviously, or I wouldn't be here.
Of course.
And I'm watching it get transformed.
Right.
I'm watching the tax structure, the spending, the way people are treated, drive out the people who are born here, live here,
right,
and get replaced by people moving down to buy second homes.
Right.
And the government that's elected by the people is driving those people out in tens of thousands, not just one or two.
Absolutely.
And it's turning us. It has happened in St. John, where the stateside outnumber, people who are from there.
People, yes.
Yeah, and the residents, who aren't statesiders, who've been from here for a long time, and the whole culture is getting turned over.
Yeah.
The culture can't survive this. We have a culture of you walk into a room and it's good morning to everybody. You drive down the street and somebody stopped in the middle of the road and somebody stopped the other way and they're talking, and that's okay.
Sure.
And you're on a side street and somebody stops to let you out.
Sure.
And I think it's just a wonderful place to live. It's unique in the world. And as these people come in from the States, I'm driving 35 miles an hour, and all of a sudden somebody pulls out and passes me at 60 miles an hour. I can see the car. It's a stateside who just came down here. It's like, what are you doing? You're going to save 30 seconds. They're just obliterating the whole culture as they come in, and I don't like it.
Well, yes, and you're talking about quality of life that we've been used to having for years. And again, what is interesting, the amount of real estate that's selling out east. We're talking about high-priced houses. When they finally get here and they've gone through the seduction process, the sun, the sand, and the sea, and they realize they don't have medical services, somebody's acquired a massive amount of wealth. Some of these properties are turning over in a year, 9 months, 6 months, and another one comes on board and realizes it. And, and also, as you say, the sociological implications of this transformation of a society that we're used to. And that's why you're seeing a lot of this ugliness during the campaign.
And it's aging.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, my God, yes.
People here who live here or from here, multi-generations, they're 50, 60 years old
Right.
now. There are a few younger ones, but not very many.
Right.
You know, they're all gone in the States. Look, our job is to educate our children so that they can go anywhere they want in the world and be successful. And then we have to have our economy attractive enough so that we can compete to get them back. Well, we've failed on that, both sides, but we get a few of them out there, and they do phenomenally well. Then the economy is not anywhere near what it needs to be to get them back here.
Warren, you and I have been there, done that, and again, some closing thoughts on your part about going out and voting for Lucky 7.
Right. So again, Warren Mosler, Ray Fonseca, independent candidates for governor. It's been a long 3 months. I've learned a lot in the debates, by the way.
You bet your ass.
From all the other candidates, and I integrate that into my presentations, and I give credit for it.
Yeah.
And I would have hoped the others would have done the same by now, but I've seen, very little.
Well, they're integrating a lot of your ideas. They're constantly praising you.
The ones I see are good, but there's some. Look, but anyway, I won't get into that. We're in the closing remarks here. So we are number 7 on the ballot. If you've watched the debates, if you've listened to my proposals, if you like what you're hearing and you'd like to see these things implemented, then we're asking for your vote. If you have other reasons to vote for other people, we appreciate that and respect that you vote for who you choose. We're also, the way I say it is, I don't have any relatives down here, so I'm at a disadvantage when it comes to hiring people.
You sure we're not relatives? We look alike.
But we are not going to be asking for resignations.
Right.
Okay, we will be doing our best to work with the people in place. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, there are some commissioners I know that will be leaving, and some probably will get changed. But people working in the departments, we're giving the benefit of the doubt. They are there for public service. Once they have leadership that gives them good vision as to and clear direction as to how to serve that public purpose, and they're properly supported and financed, and where everybody's going to get an opportunity to show that they can do a good job, and we'll have a good interface between government and the public, and so we are. Anybody working for the government now should not be concerned that your job is at risk. After we take over, should we win on November 6th, you could be wearing your MAP shirt, your Bryant shirt, your Donna Stark shirt. It's fine. It's going to be complete freedom of political expression. You're never going to have to fear that. You're never going to have to fear that your wife, who's working for the government, might get fired if you're carrying somebody else's sign. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be a whole.
Warren, I got to let you go. This is probably one of the most frank discussions we've really had, and that was very enlightening. And again, it should give the folks out there a real sense of the caliber of individual.
And on November 7th, look for 6 slightly used government limousines going up for sale on eBay, and those funds will be filling the potholes immediately.
All right. So each and every one of you out there, again, I want to thank Governor Mack for being on in the beginning of the show and our discussion there, although we don't agree with all the points that he brings up, as well as Mosler here, who is a breath of fresh air, not the typical, quote, politician. And tomorrow I've got David Mack coming on from the Port Authority, and I did not have to subpoena him. So God bless each and every one of you. God bless the United States Virgin Islands. Remember, you can catch this tonight between 6 and 8 or catch it on Facebook. See you mañana.